Have you ever felt like your life was spiraling out of control, only to realize that the chaos was actually leading you to your destiny? Welcome back to Fate's Gentle Hands, the sanctuary for those who believe in the power of unexpected love. We often think of fate as a cruel storm, tearing our plans apart. But sometimes it's a gentle hand reaching out to save us just when we're about to fall off the edge. Today, we are diving into a story that proves even the darkest nights can end with the most blinding sunrise. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the rest of the world fade away. You aren't just listening to a story, you are stepping into a life where passion meets danger and where the heart always finds its way home. Are you ready to let fate take the wheel? Let's begin. A doll. It has to be a doll, Papa promised. Lily's voice rang out, clear and bright like a silver bell, cutting through the warm silence of the sprawling living room. I stood leaning against the archway, a soft smile playing on my lips as I watched my daughter wrestle with the massive box wrapped in deep velvet red paper. Today was her 6th birthday. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air, painting a picture of domestic perfection that felt almost like a dream. For the past 6 months, my life had been exactly that, a dream. Alexander, the man who had claimed me at the altar when my world was falling apart, had transformed this fortress of stone and steel into a home. He had given Lily a name, a family, and a safety so absolute it felt like a warm blanket. Or at least, that is what I had foolishly allowed myself to believe. "Open it up, princess," I encouraged, stepping a little closer, my heart full of that quiet, steady happiness I never thought I would find. Lily's small hands tore at the final ribbon. She lifted the heavy lid with a grunt of effort. Time seemed to stutter and stop. There was no squeal of delight, there was no electronic chime of a toy. There was only silence, a thick, suffocating silence that lasted for exactly 2 heartbeats. And then, a scream. It was not a cry of surprise. It was a primal shriek of terror that tore from my daughter's throat. A sound so raw it shattered the peace of the morning into a million jagged shards. Lily scrambled backward, her heels skidding on the polished hardwood, her face drained of all blood. The box lid hit the floor with a heavy, dull thud. I lunged forward, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The smell hit me before I even reached the box. It was thick, metallic, and cloyingly sweet. The smell of a butcher shop? The smell of death. Resting there, nestled mockingly amidst layers of expensive cream-colored silk, was not a doll. It was a severed pig's head. It was fresh. Dark, viscous blood was still oozing from the jagged neck, staining the pristine silk crimson. Its eyes had been gouged out, leaving 2 hollow black pits that seemed to stare directly into my soul. And clamped between its bared white teeth was a thick, gold-rimmed card. I snatched the card with trembling fingers, bile rising in my throat. The calligraphy was elegant, sweeping, and utterly sadistic. "Mongrel blood has no right to sit at the high table. Happy birthday, little princess." "Mommy, blood! There is blood!" Lily sobbed, curling into a tight ball on the floor, her hands covering her eyes, her small body shaking violently. I dropped to my knees and pulled her into my arms, burying her face into my chest, trying to shield her from the grotesque sight. "It is okay, baby. I am here. Do not look, Lily. Do not look." My mind raced, flashing back through the last few months. The peace had been a lie. I should have known. Alexander had changed recently. He had become softer with us, yes. He spent hours in the stables teaching Lily to ride, his large hands gentle as he guided her. But behind closed doors, the tension was mounting. He was finalizing the legal adoption. He was pushing to have Lily formally recognized as a Vulov, a legitimate heir to his empire. I knew the Syndicate, that council of old conservative vultures who ruled the underworld alongside him, hated it. To them, blood was everything. And Lily, my sweet, innocent daughter, was an outsider. But I never thought they would do this. I never thought they would touch a child. Suddenly, the double doors of the main entrance burst open. It sounded like a thunderclap. Alexander did not walk in. He exploded into the room. He was still in his black suit from a morning meeting, but the tie was gone, and his shirt was unbuttoned at the top. In his right hand, a silver pistol gleamed under the chandelier lights. His eyes, usually so composed, were burning with a demonic red fury. He saw the box. He saw the blood dripping onto his expensive rug. Then he saw Lily trembling in my arms. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The air crackled with the energy of a coming storm. "Who?" he roared. One word. But it carried enough weight to crush the lungs of every servant in the room. The maids were already weeping in the corner. The head of security for the morning shift, a man twice my size named Marcus, stepped forward, his face ashen. "Boss." I checked the scanner. It showed organic material. I thought it was the Wagyu beef delivery for the dinner. It was tagged as food. Alexander did not let him finish. He moved with a speed that blurred the vision. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbed Marcus by the throat, and slammed him backward onto the glass coffee table. The crash was deafening. Shards of glass flew everywhere. Alexander jammed the barrel of his gun into the man's temple. His knuckles were white. His veins bulged against his neck. "I pay you to protect them." Alexander's voice dropped to a terrifying, vibrating whisper. "I pay you with a fortune to keep my wife and daughter safe, not to deliver death into my living room." His finger tightened on the trigger. I saw the hammer of the gun pull back. He was going to execute him, right here, right now, in front of Lily. "Alexander, stop!" I screamed, untangling myself from Lily and scrambling across the broken glass. I did not care about the cuts on my knees. I did not care about the guard. But I cared about Lily's soul. She could not see her father become a monster, not on her birthday. I threw myself between him and the man, placing my hands directly over his hand that held the gun. His skin was burning hot, radiating a lethal rage. "Look at me, Alex," I gasped, forcing myself to stand tall, forcing him to meet my gaze. "Lily is right there. She is watching you. She needs her father right now, not a killer. Do not do this, not today." His jaw muscles ticked violently. He looked down at me, his chest heaving. For a second, I thought he might push me aside. But then his gaze flickered over my shoulder to where Lily sat paralyzed with fear. The murderous light in his eyes fractured, replaced by a deep, agonizing pain. He released the guard. The man slumped to the floor, gasping for air, blood trickling from his forehead. "Get out!" Alexander snarled, not looking at the man. "Clean this filth up, burn it, and seal the estate. Lockdown protocol. Now. Nothing comes in, nothing goes out." The servants scrambled to obey, terrified. Alexander stepped over the debris and fell to his knees beside Lily. The most powerful crime lord in the city, the man who ruled with an iron fist, was shaking as he reached out to touch his daughter's hair. "Papa is sorry, little one," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Papa promised to keep you safe. Papa failed." I watched them, tears blurring my vision. My heart ached for him, for his guilt. But beneath the sadness, something else was waking up inside me. A cold, hard anger. I was not the scared girl I was 6 months ago. Someone had hurt my child. Someone had made her scream. And whoever they were, they had made a grave mistake. Sirens began to wail outside. The estate's lockdown alarms. The sound was piercing, a rhythmic scream warning of danger. I stood there, amidst the ruins of the birthday morning, and a thought crystallized in my mind. They think they can use fear to make me run? They think a severed head will make me pack my bags and leave Alexander? They are wrong. I am not the abandoned bride anymore. I am the wife of the dawn. But who are they? How did they bypass Alexander's security? If you were me, standing in this room that smells of blood and expensive perfume, what would you do? Would you grab your child and run into the night? Or would you stay and fight a war you might not survive? Tell me in the comments below, fight or run? And please hit that subscribe button because the war for my daughter's life has just begun. A sharp ringing sound cut through the alarm noise. It was Alexander's personal phone. He pulled it from his pocket. He did not speak. He just listened. I watched his face transform. The guilt vanished. The cold, ruthless mask of the dawn slid back into place. "Understood," he said. Then he hurled the phone against the stone fireplace. It shattered into plastic and wire. He turned to me, his eyes dark and empty. "That was Petrov, the head of the Syndicate." My breath hitched. "Did he apologize?" Alexander let out a dark, humorless laugh. "No. He said the annual meeting is tomorrow, and he ordered me to bring Lily. He said they want to test her quality, to see if she is worthy of existing in their world." I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. They did not just send a threat. They had just invited us into the lion's den. If you're watching this story right now, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And answer this: fight or run? What would you choose if your child were threatened? Subscribe to Fate's Gentle Hands so you don't miss what happens next, because this war has only just begun. The morning sun over the estate was cold and pale, offering no warmth against the chill that had settled in my bones since the incident with the pig's head. Alexander stood by the sleek black sedan, his expression a mask of stone. He adjusted his cufflinks, but I saw the slight tremor in his fingers. He was furious, not at me, but at the Syndicate's archaic rules. "I cannot go in with you, Emma," he said, his voice tight. "The council meeting is strictly blood members only. They will tear me apart if I bring an outsider into the inner sanctum. But the tea party, that is a test. A trap designed by their wives." He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "If anyone touches you, if anyone even looks at Lily the wrong way, you press the button on your bracelet. Dmitri will level the building, do you understand?" "Do." I nodded, swallowing the lump of fear in my throat. "I understand." I took Lily's small hand. She was dressed in a pristine white dress with lace trim, clutching her new teddy bear like a shield. She looked like an angel, too pure for the viper's nest we were about to enter. We drove in silence to the Petrov estate. The venue for the ladies' tea was the conservatory, a massive glass structure filled with exotic plants. But as soon as the heavy oak doors opened, I knew this was no garden. It was a battlefield. The air was thick, suffocatingly sweet with the scent of expensive orchids and heavy perfume. The sound of crystal clinking against china filled the room, punctuated by the murmur of polite, hushed conversations. But the moment I stepped across the threshold, the noise died. Every head turned. Dozens of eyes, sharp and assessing, raked over me. They looked at my dress, my hair, my shoes, searching for a flaw, a crack in the armor. "Oh, look who decided to grace us with her presence." The voice was smooth, cultured, but underlined with a razor-sharp edge. A woman detached herself from a group near the fountain and glided toward us. She was stunning. Platinum blonde hair styled in perfect waves, ice blue eyes, and a figure wrapped in a white haute couture suit that probably cost more than my entire nursing school tuition. Katerina Volkov, the daughter of Elder Petrov, the woman Alexander was supposed to marry. "Welcome, Emma." She did not use my married name. It was a deliberate slight. "And this must be the little one Alexander picked up?" A ripple of tittering laughter went through the room. I felt Lily shrink against my leg. "Hello, Katerina," I replied, keeping my voice steady, my spine steel straight. "This is Lily Vulov, my husband's daughter." Husband. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Katerina's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. "Legally, perhaps. Paperwork is easy to forge in our world. Blood, however, blood is harder to fake." She turned to a group of children playing near a display of rare ferns. "Children, let Lily play with you, but be careful. Do not let her dirty your nice things. She is not used to quality." My blood boiled, hot and fast, but I forced a smile. "Go on, sweetie, it is okay." I watched Lily walk hesitantly toward the group. A little boy with slicked back hair looked at her teddy bear and sneered. "That is ugly. My papa buys me real toys." "It is not ugly," Lily defended softly. "My papa Alex gave it to me." "Your papa?" The boy laughed, a cruel, mocking sound learned from adults. "My mommy says your mom is just a nurse who tricked the Don. You are just a stray dog he feeds." Lily's lip trembled. She looked back at me, her eyes filling with tears. Before I could move, An older woman stepped in front of me. She was draped in pearls, her face a mask of plastic surgery and disdain. Mrs. Petrova, Katerina's mother. "So, the nurse," she said, looking down her nose at me. "Tell us, dear, what kind of sedative did you use to trap a man like Alexander? Or perhaps it was not medicine. Perhaps it was a different kind of skill? The kind you do not learn in school?" The circle of women closed in, their perfume cloying, their faces twisted in amusement. They were waiting for me to break, to cry, to run. "I am a nurse, Mrs. Petrova," I said, my voice calm but loud enough to carry. "Which means I know how to save a life. But I also know exactly how fragile a human body is. It takes surprisingly little pressure to stop a heart. Did you know that?" Her smile faltered. Suddenly, a cry from the children's corner shattered the tension. I spun around. Katerina was standing over Lily. A teapot lay shattered on the floor. Steam rose from the white lace of Lily's dress, now stained brown. Lily was screaming, clutching her arm. "Oh my goodness!" Katerina exclaimed, her hand flying to her mouth in mock horror. "I am so clumsy," I tripped. "I am so sorry, little girl, but really you shouldn't have been standing in my way. It is just a dress. Your mother can probably sew it up, right?" The room went silent, dead silent. The red haze of rage that descended over my vision was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was cold, absolute. I walked over to Lily. I checked her arm. The skin was red but not blistered. The thick fabric had protected her. "Stay here, baby," I whispered. I stood up and turned to Katerina. She was smirking, waiting for the apology, waiting for the submission. I walked right up to her, into her personal space. "What are you doing?" Katerina scoffed. "Do not think you can make a scene here. You are—" I did not let her finish. My hand shot out, not to slap her, but to grip her wrist, her right wrist, the one that had held the teapot. "What? Let go of me," she hissed, trying to yank her hand back. She couldn't. My thumb found the pressure point between her thumb and index finger. The Hegu point. In nursing school, we learned it for pain relief. But press it hard enough, at the right angle, and it sends a shockwave of agony straight up the nerve that can paralyze the arm. I pressed hard. "Ah!" Katerina gasped, her knees buckling, her face contorted, the mask of beauty shattering into ugly pain. She tried to scream, but the shock took her breath away. I leaned in close, so close my lips brushed her ear. No one else could hear us over the frantic beating of her own heart. "Listen to me, you spoiled, vicious little brat," I whispered, my voice devoid of any emotion. "If you ever touch my daughter again, if you spill one more drop of hot liquid near her, I will not use pressure points. I will use a scalpel, and I will make sure you never hold a teacup again. Do you understand me?" I dug my thumb deeper. "Do you understand?" "Yes," she whimpered, tears leaking from her eyes. I released her abruptly. She stumbled back, clutching her numb hand, staring at me with genuine terror. I smoothed my skirt and turned to the room of gaping women. "I apologize," I said, my voice sweet and polite. Mrs. Volkov seemed to be having a muscle spasm. As a nurse, I just helped her release the tension. I picked Lily up, holding her close. "Let's go home, baby. This tea tastes like poison anyway." I walked to the door, my head high. But just as my hand touched the brass handle, Katerina's voice rang out behind me, shrill, desperate, venomous. "You think you won? You think he loves that brat?" I stopped. "He is using her!" Katerina shrieked, her composure gone. "He is fattening her up for the slaughter, you stupid woman! Do you not know about the blood contract from 5 years ago?" I turned slowly. "What are you talking about?" Katerina laughed, a broken manic sound. "Ask your precious husband who killed Lily's biological father. It wasn't an accident, Emma. Alexander put a bullet in his head 5 years ago. He created that orphan. And now he is playing daddy to the victim." The world tilted on its axis. The air left my lungs. I stared at her, praying it was a lie. But the gleam in her eyes, it was the gleam of a truth used as a weapon. I pushed the door open and ran. The drive home was a blur of gray sky and wet pavement. Lily fell asleep in her car seat, exhausted from the trauma, clutching her bear. I sat staring out the window, Katerina's words echoing in my skull like a cursed mantra. Alexander killed him. Alexander created the orphan. It couldn't be true. The Alexander who read bedtime stories, who ordered a custom saddle for Lily's pony, who held me when I had nightmares. He could not be a cold-blooded murderer of my child's father. But then I remembered the darkness that sometimes clouded his eyes when he looked at Lily, the way he would freeze if she asked about her real papa. The excessive, almost desperate need to protect her. Was it guilt? Was it penance? We arrived at the estate. The house was dark, unusually so for barely 6 in the evening. "Where is he?" I asked Dmitri as I handed sleeping Lily to the nanny. "The master is in his study, madam," Dmitri replied, his eyes avoiding mine. "He gave orders not to be disturbed." I nodded, my heart heavy with dread. I walked up the grand staircase, the silence of the house pressing against my ears. I reached the heavy mahogany doors of his study. I didn't knock. I pushed one open just a crack. The room was shadowed, lit only by the dying embers of the fireplace. Alexander was sitting in his leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand. But he wasn't drinking. His hand was shaking. The glass trembled, the amber liquid rippling violently. He set it down with a clatter, missing the coaster. He gripped his head with both hands, his fingers digging into his scalp, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He was in pain, terrible pain. I wanted to rush in, but the doubt held me back. Who is he? Who is this man I married? He stood up, swaying slightly, and disappeared into the adjoining bathroom. I heard the water running. This was my chance. I slipped into the room. My eyes darted to the large oil painting of a storm at sea hanging behind his desk. I knew there was a safe behind it. I had seen him open it once, thinking I was asleep. I moved the painting. The digital keypad glowed blue in the dark. I hesitated. This was a betrayal, invading his privacy. But if Katerina was right, if there was a contract, I had to know. I typed in the date, the day we got married. Error. I tried his birthday. Error. My hands were sweating. One try left before the alarm triggered. I typed in Lily's birthday. Beep. The heavy steel door clicked open. My breath hitched. He used her birthday. I reached inside. There were stacks of cash, a gun, and a thick manila envelope. I pulled the envelope out. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped it. I opened it. There was no contract, no hit list. It was a medical file. Patient name, Alexander Vulov. Date, 3 weeks ago. I flipped through the pages, scanning the medical jargon. MRI scans showing a dark mass. Notes from a neurologist. Diagnosis, post-traumatic cranial hematoma. Late-stage complication from the blast injury. Prognosis, critical. The hematoma is pressing on the optic nerve and motor cortex. Symptoms will include tremors, blinding headaches, vision loss, and seizures. Recommendation, immediate craniotomy, survival rate 40%, patient status, surgery refused. Refused? Why? My eyes fell on a handwritten note scrawled at the bottom in Alexander's sharp, angular handwriting. Cannot operate yet. Transfer of power to Emma and Lily incomplete. If I die on the table now, the Syndicate will kill them. I must hold on until the adoption is finalized. Pain management only. The paper slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. He wasn't killing us. He was killing himself. He was enduring blinding agony, risking a stroke every second, just to stay alive long enough to sign a piece of paper that would keep us safe. Why? Alexander's voice cut through the darkness. I spun around. He stood in the bathroom doorway, water dripping from his face, a towel in his hands. He looked exhausted, pale. The strong, invincible dawn looked mortal. He saw the open safe. He saw the file on the floor. "You were not supposed to see that," he said, his voice void of anger, just weary. I ignored him. I walked up to him, tears streaming down my face. I grabbed his shirt, bunching the fabric in my fists. "You are dying," I choked out. "You are standing here acting like a god, and your brain is bleeding. Why? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would make me get the surgery," he said simply. "And if I go under anesthesia, Petrov will strike. I am the only thing standing between him and you." "And what about Lily's father?" I demanded, the question bursting out of me. "Katerina said you killed him. Is that true?" Alexander stiffened. He looked away, staring into the fire. "Yes," he said. The word hung there, heavy, final. "Why?" I whispered, my voice breaking. He looked back at me, his eyes filled with a torment so deep it stole my breath. "Because he sold her, Emma." "What?" 5 years ago. I was tracking a trafficking ring. We intercepted a deal. A junkie was selling his 1-year-old daughter for $10,000 to pay a gambling debt. That junkie was Greg, Lily's biological father. I gasped, covering my mouth. I didn't execute him because he owed me money, Alexander continued, his voice rough. I executed him because a man who sells his own flesh and blood does not deserve to breathe my air. I took the child. I left her at the orphanage with the anonymous donation to ensure she was fed. And I watched. For 5 years, I watched, waiting for a mother to come who deserved her. He took a step closer, towering over me. I did not create an orphan, Emma. I saved a daughter. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the monster the world feared, and I saw the savior my daughter needed. I threw my arms around his neck, burying my face in his neck, sobbing uncontrollably. I am sorry, I wept. I am so sorry I doubted you. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me so tight it hurt. For a moment, we just stood there, clinging to each other in the dark study, two broken people trying to hold up the sky. Suddenly, the red emergency lights in the room began to flash. A siren wailed, different from yesterday, louder, more urgent. Dmitri burst into the room, his gun drawn, his face stripped of all color. "Boss!" he shouted over the siren. "Code Black!" "What is it?" Alexander barked, pushing me behind him instantly. "The Syndicate has invoked the law of purge," Dmitri yelled. "They claim you are mentally compromised. They claim you are unfit. Petrov's men, they are at the gates. They are coming for the throne." The news hit us like a physical blow. The law of purge, an ancient barbaric rule that allowed the Syndicate to remove a leader by force if he was deemed weak. "They know," Alexander said, his voice ice cold. "Someone leaked my medical file." "We have to run," I pleaded, grabbing his arm. "Alex, you are sick. You cannot fight them. We take Lily and we go. Now." "Run?" He looked at me, a dangerous smile curling his lips. "A Vulov does not run. If I leave now, they will hunt us to the ends of the earth. No, there is only one way to stop a purge." He turned to Dmitri. "Prepare the car. We are going to the gala." The Grand Gala, the biggest event of the underworld calendar, happening tonight at the Petrov Hotel. "Are you insane?" I cried. "You are walking into a trap." "I am walking into a stage," he corrected, buttoning his shirt with steady hands, though I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. "I have to show them I am strong. I have to look them in the eye. If I falter, we die. If I stand, they back down." He looked at me. "And you are coming with me." "Me? You are my strength, Emma. Tonight you are not the nurse. You are the queen. Wear the red dress." 2 hours later, we arrived at the Petrov Hotel. I wore a gown of blood-red silk that clung to every curve, diamonds dripping from my ears. I had applied makeup to hide the fear, painting on a mask of arrogance I did not feel. Alexander looked magnificent in a tuxedo, the perfect image of power. But I could feel the heat radiating from his body. His fever was rising. "Hold me up if I stumble," he whispered as we stepped out of the car. "Do not let me fall." We entered the ballroom. It was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air smelled of champagne and treachery. As we walked down the grand staircase, conversation stopped. The music seemed to falter. Hundreds of eyes watched us, waiting for a sign of weakness, waiting for the tremor. Alexander gripped my arm, his fingers like iron. He smiled, nodding to his enemies. He looked invincible. Only I knew he was holding on to me to keep the world from spinning. Mr. Petrov emerged from the crowd. The old fox. He looked like a kindly grandfather, but his eyes were reptilian. "Alexander!" he boomed, spreading his arms. "We heard rumors you were indisposed. So glad to see them false." "Rumors are a weapon of the weak, Petrov," Alexander replied smoothly. "I have never been better." "Excellent," Petrov clapped his hands. "Then let us toast to health and long life." A waiter appeared with a tray, 2 glasses of vodka. My stomach dropped. Petrov took one. He offered the other to Alexander. Alexander hesitated for a fraction of a second. He knew. We both knew. It could be poisoned. But to refuse a toast from an elder in public was an insult punishable by death. It was a test. Alexander reached for the glass. I saw his hand tremble. just a micro tremor. Petrov's eyes narrowed. He saw it too. I had to do something. Oops! I exclaimed, stumbling forward on my high heels. I bumped into Alexander's arm hard. The glass flew from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. The clear liquid splashed onto Petrov's shiny shoes. Oh, clumsy me, I laughed, a bright fake sound. I am so sorry, Alexander. These new heels are treacherous. The room held its breath. Petrov looked down at his shoes, then up at me. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Charming, he murmured. No harm done, my dear. Accidents happen. He snapped his fingers. Waiter! Another glass. My heart stopped. The waiter brought another tray. Petrov picked up the glass himself this time. He held it out to Alexander, his eyes boring into my husband's. You wouldn't refuse me twice, would you, son? Alexander looked at the glass. He looked at me. He knew I couldn't save him again. Of course not, Alexander said. He took the glass, he raised it. To the Syndicate, he toasted, and he drank. He downed the whole shot in one swallow. 1 second passed. 2, 3. Alexander stood tall, he smiled. Petrov looked disappointed. Maybe it wasn't poisoned. Maybe it was just a mind game. And then Alexander blinked once, twice. His hand went to his forehead. Alex, I whispered, grabbing his arm. He looked at me, but his eyes were unfocused. Emma, he slurred. Why are the lights so dim? Blood. A single drop of dark blood dripped from his nose onto his white shirt. Then another. He swayed. He is going down, someone shouted. Alexander collapsed. He didn't just fall, he crashed to the floor like a felled oak tree. Alex! I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him. Pandemonium erupted. People were screaming, shoving. Katerina appeared out of nowhere, looking triumphant. Stroke! She yelled, pointing at Alexander's convulsing body. He is having a stroke! Call the medics! Get him to the family wing! Security guards, Petrov's men, swarmed us. They grabbed me, pulling me away from him. No, let me go! I am a nurse! Let me help him! I fought, kicking and scratching. Get her out of here, Petrov ordered, his voice cold and satisfied. She is hysterical. As they dragged me backward through the sea of legs, I saw them lifting Alexander onto a stretcher. His face was gray. He looked dead. And then I saw him. Dmitri, Alexander's most loyal guard, the man who swore to protect him with his life. He was standing in the shadows behind Petrov. He wasn't rushing to help. He wasn't fighting. He was watching. Petrov looked at Dmitri, and Dmitri, he nodded. A short, sharp nod of acknowledgement. My world shattered. Dmitri was the leak. Dmitri was the traitor. I screamed Alexander's name one last time as the doors slammed shut, separating me from my husband, leaving me alone in a room full of wolves. Alexander has fallen right in the heart of the enemy's lair. Blood is flowing. The traitor has been revealed as the one we trusted most. Emma is completely isolated. Do you think the wine was poisoned, or was Alexander's illness triggered at the right moment? Did Dmitri truly betray her, or is this a deeper, more elaborate scheme? Comment your theory below. Poison or illness? Who is the real enemy? Don't forget to like the video to give Emma strength in this lonely and desperate fight in part next. She will need all your help. Need all. The ambulance doors slammed shut, sealing my husband inside with wolves dressed as paramedics. I stood on the wet pavement, the rain mingling with the tears I refused to shed. They wouldn't let me ride with him. Family protocol, the guard had sneered, shoving me back. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I turned around, spotted a guest from the gala fumbling with his keys, a silver Porsche, and I didn't think. I snatched the keys from his hand, ignored his shout of protest, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, a beast waking up, matching the fury in my chest. I drove like a madwoman, tailing the ambulance through the slick streets of the city. I knew where they were taking him. The St. Jude Private Medical Center. It sounded holy. It wasn't. It was a fortress owned by the Syndicate, a place where people went to get fixed or to disappear. When I arrived, the lockdown was already in effect. Armed guards patrolled the entrance. I didn't stop. I drove the car through the security gate, the metal screeching as it sheared off the side mirror and skidded to a halt right in front of the emergency doors. I stormed in. Where is he? I demanded of the nurse at the front desk. Alexander Vulov. She looked at me, at my ruined red dress, my wild hair. Mrs. Vulov, please, The doctors are with him in ICU 4. You cannot go in. I pushed past her. 2 guards blocked the hallway. Let me through! Mrs. Vulov. A man in a white coat approached. He looked too clean, too calm. Dr. Vane. I knew him. He was Petrov's personal physician. Alexander has suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage, Vane said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. It is exactly as we feared. The pressure is too high. We need to operate immediately to relieve it. He held out a clipboard, a consent form. Sign here. We need to transfer legal authority to Mr. Petrov temporarily, just to authorize the procedure and stabilize the organization while Alexander recovers. I looked at the paper. It wasn't just a medical consent. It was a power of attorney. It gave Petrov control over everything. The accounts, the territory, Lily. I looked at Vane. Can I see him? Not right now. He is unstable. Sign, Emma. We are losing time. I shoved past him to the window of ICU 4. Alexander lay on the bed, hooked up to a dozen machines. He was shirtless, his skin gray. I pressed my face to the glass. I looked at the monitors. His heart rate was erratic but slow, bradycardia. Then I looked at his face. His eyes were taped shut, but I saw the moisture at the corners of his mouth. Froth. Slight, but there. And the muscle tremors under his skin were rhythmic. Fasciculations. I thought back to the gala. The way he stumbled. The pinpoint pupils I had glimpsed before he collapsed. Hemorrhage causes blown pupils, uneven pupils. Pinpoint pupils, foaming mouth, muscle twitching, slow heart rate. This wasn't a stroke, this wasn't a hemorrhage. This was organophosphate poisoning, a nerve agent. They were not taking him to surgery to save him. They were taking him to the operating room to finish the job, to cut open his brain and let him bleed out, claiming it was a complication. I turned to Vane. No. Excuse me? I am not signing, and you are not cutting him open. Vane's face hardened. You are hysterical. Guards, remove her. The guards stepped forward. I backed away, hands raised. Fine, I will go. I turned and walked away. I walked until I turned the corner. Then I ran. I didn't run to the exit. I ran to the janitor's closet I had spotted earlier. I grabbed a lighter from my pocket. Alexander's lighter, which I had picked up from the bedroom floor this morning, and held it up to the smoke detector on the ceiling. 1 second, 2 seconds. The alarm shrieked, a piercing, deafening wail that signaled fire. The sprinkler system exploded overhead, drenching the hallway in cold, dirty water. Chaos. Nurses screamed. Patients stumbled out of rooms. Guards were distracted, shouting into their radios. I used the confusion. I slipped into the locker room. My hands shook as I stripped off my soaked red gown, the symbol of the queen I tried to be, and pulled on a set of blue scrubs I found in an open locker. I tied a surgical mask over my face. I was not the Don's wife anymore. I was Nurse Emma, and I was in my element. I grabbed a crash cart from the hallway and pushed it toward ICU 4, keeping my head down. The water from the sprinklers masked my tears. The guards were gone, likely securing the perimeter. Dr. Vane was shouting at someone down the hall. I slipped inside the room. The sound of the ventilator was a rhythmic hiss. Alexander looked so small in that bed. I didn't waste a second. I went to the crash cart. My eyes scanned the drawers. Epinephrine, lidocaine. Where is it? There! Atropine, the antidote for nerve agents. I grabbed the vial and a syringe. My hands were slippery with sweat and sprinkler water. I drew up the full dose. This was a gamble. If I was wrong, if it really was a hemorrhage, this would spike his heart rate and kill him instantly. I was betting his life on my diagnosis. I looked at his face. I love you, I whispered. I found the port in his IV line. I injected the atropine. I watched the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. Nothing happened. Come on, Alex, come on. Beep, 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 beep. His heart rate climbed. 60, 70, 90. The fasciculations under his skin stopped. He took a deep, jagged breath, fighting the ventilator. His eyes flew open. They were wild, unfocused, terrified. Alex, I whispered, pulling down my mask. It is me. It is Emma. He blinked, trying to focus. His hand reached out, gripping my wrist with a strength that shouldn't have been possible. He tried to speak around the tube. I pulled it out. It was dangerous, reckless, but we had no time. He gagged, coughing violently.
Dmitri,
he rasped, his voice sounding like gravel. I know, I cried softly, wiping the foam from his lips. I know he betrayed you. I saw him nod at Petrov. Alexander shook his head, his eyes intense, desperate. No, he wheezed, not betrayal, the plan. It was the plan. I froze. Before I could ask what he meant, the door to the ICU banged open. I spun around, putting my body between Alexander and the intruder. It was Petrov and Katerina, and two men in suits who were definitely not doctors. Petrov was smiling. He clapped his hands slowly. Bravo, my dear, he said, his voice smooth as oil. I must admit, I underestimated the little nurse. You diagnosed the poison. Very clever. He stepped into the room, pulling a gun from his jacket. You saved him, Emma. You brought him back to life, just so I can have the pleasure of killing him a second time. He raised the gun, aiming it directly at Alexander's forehead. Alexander tried to sit up, but he was too weak. I stood my ground, though I had no weapon, nothing but my body to shield him. Goodbye, Don Volov, Petrov sneered. Flash. Bang! The world went black. The sound of the gunshot was the last thing I heard. The gunshot echoed in the small room, deafening and absolute. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the pain, waiting for the warm spray of Alexander's blood. Thud. The sound of a body hitting the floor. I opened my eyes. Alexander was still breathing. I was still breathing. But the man standing to the right of Petrov, the assassin who had raised his weapon to back up his boss, was on the ground, a hole in the center of his forehead. Petrov stood frozen, his gun still raised, his mouth open in shock. Behind him, smoke curled from the barrel of a silenced pistol. Dmitri, Alexander's head of security, the man I thought had sold us out, shifted his aim in a blur of motion. Bang! The second assassin dropped. Petrov stumbled back, terror flooding his eyes. You nodded. You agreed. Alexander let out a low, dark laugh from the bed behind me. He sounded like a demon crawling out of the pit. He nodded to acknowledge the order. Petrov, Alexander rasped, pushing himself up on his elbows, his eyes burning with triumph. My order. To wait until the snake showed his head before cutting it off. Petrov turned to run, but Dmitri was faster. He pistol-whipped the old man, sending him crashing into the medical equipment. We have to go, Dmitri shouted, his voice urgent. Boss, can you move? Alexander nodded, but when he tried to swing his legs over the bed, he collapsed. The poison was neutralized, but his body was ravaged. I grabbed his left arm. Dmitri grabbed his right. Emma, take the gun, Alexander whispered, pressing a heavy, cold piece of metal into my hand. It was Petrov's gun, which had skittered across the floor. I have never shot anyone, I stammered, my hands trembling. Today is a day of firsts, he said. We burst out of the room. The hallway was chaos. The fire alarm was still blaring, strobing lights painting the walls in flashes of red and shadow. Petrov's backup team was coming down the east wing. I could hear their boots pounding against the tile. Stairs! Dmitri yelled. We dragged Alexander toward the emergency stairwell. My bare feet slipped on the wet floor. I was fueled by nothing but adrenaline and terror. A door burst open ahead of us. A man in a suit blocked the path, raising a machine gun. Shoot, Emma! Alexander roared. I didn't think, I didn't aim, I just pointed the gun and pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly broke my wrist. The bullet shattered the glass of the fire extinguisher case next to the man's head. He flinched, ducking instinctively. It was enough. Dmitri fired 2 clean shots. The man fell. I stared at the gun in my hand. I had almost killed a man. I had tried to kill a man. The realization should have broken me. Instead, it hardened something inside my chest. I was not just a nurse anymore. I was a survivor. We reached the parking garage. Dmitri shoved us into the back of a nondescript gray van. Drive, Alexander commanded me. Dmitri will cover the rear. Me? You know the city. Get us to the safe house, the one in the Bronx. Go! I jumped into the driver's seat. The van screeched out of the garage just as bullets began to ping against the back doors. The drive was a blur of high-speed turns and near misses. I drove over curbs, ran red lights, weaving through the snow-slicked streets of New York. In the rearview mirror, I saw Alexander convulsing. The atropine. It was a poison itself in high doses. I had given him enough to stop the nerve agent, but now his nervous system was misfiring. He is seizing! Dmitri yelled from the back, holding Alexander down. Hold him steady! I screamed, swerving to avoid a taxi. Almost there! My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I looked at my husband in the mirror. He was foaming at the mouth again, his eyes rolling back. "Don't you die on me, Alexander Vulov!" I shouted, tears finally spilling over. "You promised me forever. We have only had 6 months." I slammed on the brakes in front of a dilapidated warehouse in the industrial district. The safe house. Dmitri kicked the doors open and carried Alexander inside. I followed, locking the heavy steel door behind us, sealing us in the darkness. We were safe. For now. But as I looked at my hands, still gripping the gun, I knew the woman who had walked into that hospital was gone. She had died in emergency room 4. The safe house was essentially a bunker disguised as a ruin. The basement was warm, powered by a generator, with a crackling fire in an old iron stove. I had spent the last hour stabilizing Alexander. I inserted an IV, administered a sedative to stop the seizures, and cleaned the blood from his face. Now he lay on a cot, the firelight dancing across his pale skin. Dmitri was upstairs, standing guard. It was just us. I sat on the floor beside him, my red dress ruined, my hair a mess. I felt hollowed out. "Emma." His voice was a whisper. He was awake. I moved closer, taking his hand. "I am here." "You saved me," he said, his eyes finding mine. "You defied the doctors. You fought Petrov. You shot a gun." "I did what I had to do," I said softly. He tried to sit up, wincing. "We need to talk. About what Katerina said. About the blood contract." I stiffened. "I don't want to talk about it." "We have to. You opened the safe. You saw the medical file, but you were looking for the contract. You believed her." I looked down. "She said you killed Lily's father, that you created an orphan to play hero." "It is true," he said. I flinched, pulling my hand away. "I killed him," Alexander continued, his voice steady but laced with pain. 5 years ago, I intercepted a deal at the docks. A man was trading a package for $10,000 to clear a gambling debt with the triads." He paused, taking a breath. "The package was a 1-year-old girl, Lily." I stared at him, my mouth falling open. "He sold her?" "He didn't just sell her, Emma. He was laughing about it. He said she was too expensive to feed." A sob trapped in my throat. My stomach turned. Greg. The man I had mourned, the man I thought had died in a car accident. He was a monster. "I didn't kill him because he owed money," Alexander said, his eyes burning into mine. "I put a bullet in his head because a man who sells his own flesh and blood is a disease. I took the child. I couldn't keep her then. My world was too unstable. I left her at the orphanage with an anonymous donation. And I watched." "You watched?" "For 5 years. I watched to make sure she was safe. I waited for a mother to come along who would love her enough to die for her. And then I found you." He reached out, his fingers brushing the tears from my cheeks. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid, Emma. I was afraid you would look at these hands and only see the blood. I was afraid you would see a killer, not a husband." I grabbed his hand, the hand that had pulled the trigger, the hand that had saved my daughter from a life of slavery, and I pressed it to my lips. I kissed his palm, his scars, his knuckles. "I don't see a killer," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I see the man who saved us. I see the father my daughter deserves." He pulled me down to him. Our lips met, not in a desperate, hungry kiss, but in a slow, deep communion of souls. In that basement, surrounded by danger, with the scent of wood smoke and antiseptic in the air, I forgave him. I accepted him. All of him. The darkness and the light. In a world built on lies, Alexander chose to bear the weight of a terrible truth in silence, just to preserve the innocence of a child. That is a love that transcends words. If you have listened this far, please help me by commenting the word trust below. Let me know that there are still companions walking this path with me, understanding the silent sacrifices of these characters. Your presence is the greatest motivation for me to tell the story of the final counterattack. Suddenly, a harsh electronic chirping broke the moment. It was the satellite phone on the table, Dmitri's emergency line. Alexander grabbed it. Vulov. His face went white, whiter than when he was poisoned. He put the phone on speaker. A video feed flickered to life on the small screen. It was the main hall of our mansion. Katerina stood there, smiling into the camera. In one hand, she held a pair of long silver scissors. With the other hand, she was gripping Lily's hair. Lily was crying, terrifyingly silent tears, her eyes wide with horror. "Hello, lovers," Katerina cooed. "The council is watching this live. I thought we should give the little princess a new haircut. Or maybe something more permanent." She brought the scissors to Lily's neck. "Come home, Alexander, come home and die, or the girl bleeds." The screen on the satellite phone went black, but the image of the silver scissors pressing against my daughter's throat was burned into my retinas forever. I did not scream. I did not cry. The tears that had been falling moments ago dried up instantly, evaporating in the heat of a rage so pure, so white-hot, that it felt like I had swallowed the sun. I stood up. I smoothed down the ruined fabric of my red dress. I tied my messy hair back into a tight knot, my hands steady, my movements precise. I looked at Alexander. He was staring at me, pain and fury warring in his dark eyes. He was waiting for me to break. "I want her head," I said. My voice did not sound like my own. It sounded like grinding stones. "I want to see the life leave her eyes." Alexander studied me for a heartbeat. Then he nodded. A terrifying, predatory approval settled over his features. "We take the front door," he commanded Dmitri. "No sneaking, no shadows. We go in as kings. Call the Ghost Squad." The Ghost Squad. The legends of the underworld. Men who didn't exist on paper, who only answered to the dawn. 10 minutes later, we were in the back of an armored SUV, speeding through the snowstorm toward the mansion. The convoy was massive, a river of black steel cutting through the white night. Alexander reached under his seat and pulled out a small velvet-wrapped bundle. He unwrapped it to reveal a knife. It wasn't a combat knife. It was a curved, ornate dagger with a handle of bone and a blade of Damascus steel. "Do not use a gun," he said, his voice low and intimate as he lifted the hem of my dress and strapped the sheath to my thigh. The leather felt cold against my skin, a stark contrast to his warm fingers. "A gun is too fast. It is too impersonal. If she touches you, if anyone touches you, you use this." I looked at the blade. It was beautiful. It was deadly. "I understand," I whispered. The car screeched to a halt. We were at the main gates. The plan was madness. Alexander and the ghosts would breach the perimeter, drawing Petrov's fire. I would walk into the main hall, alone, unarmed, save for the hidden blade. I was the distraction, the mother coming to beg. I stepped out of the car. The snow swirled around me, biting at my exposed skin, but I didn't feel the cold. I felt only the burning need to get to my child. I walked up the front steps. The massive oak doors were ajar. I pushed them open and stepped into the grand foyer. It was silent, the kind of silence that happens before a bomb goes off. "Hello, Emma." Katerina's voice floated down from the grand staircase. She was standing on the landing, looking like a twisted ice queen. She still held Lily. The scissors were still at my daughter's neck. Lily's eyes found mine. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered, but she didn't make a sound. "Let her go, Katerina," I said, my voice echoing off the marble walls. "This is between you and me." Katerina laughed. It was a brittle, fragile sound. "Oh no, this is between me and the destiny that was stolen from me. You were just a placeholder, Emma. A temporary amusement for Alexander until he realized he needed a real queen." I took a step forward. My hand brushed my thigh, feeling the outline of the dagger. "A queen?" I scoffed, injecting a mocking pity into my tone. I looked at her, tilting my head. "You are not a queen, Katerina. You are a pawn that your father is sacrificing to test Alexander." Her smile faltered. "Shut up, my father loves me." "Does he?" I took another step. "Or does he just want the Vulov Empire? He sent you here to die, Katerina. He knows Alexander is coming. He knows the ghosts are outside." "Liar!" she shrieked, pressing the scissors tighter. A drop of blood beaded on Lily's neck. My heart stopped, but I forced my face to remain impassive. I pulled Alexander's smartwatch from my pocket. I had taken it off his wrist in the basement. "Do you want to hear it?" I asked. "The recording from the hospital?" I pressed play. The volume echoed through the hall. "You saved him, Emma, just so I can have the pleasure of killing him a second time." Petrov's voice, clear as day. Katerina froze. He poisoned Alexander, I said, walking closer. He broke the sacred laws of the Syndicate, and you helped him. You are not royalty anymore, Katerina. You are a traitor, and traitors don't get thrones, they get graves. She looked wild, panic setting in. Her grip on Lily loosened slightly. No, no, he said we would rule together. She looked down at me, her eyes filled with hate. It is your fault. If you hadn't come, he would have loved me. She raised the scissors high, aiming not at Lily's neck, but preparing to plunge them down into her chest. No, I screamed, lunging forward. Bang! A gunshot cracked through the air like a whip. The silver scissors spun out of Katerina's hand, shattered by a bullet flying across the room. Katerina screamed, clutching her hand. I looked up. Alexander stepped out from the shadows of the upper balcony. He looked like the Grim Reaper in a torn, bloody dress shirt. His gun was smoking. He didn't look at Katerina, he looked at me. My wife wants to have a word with you, he said, his voice a low rumble of death. And then he lowered his gun. I didn't wait. I flew up the stairs. I hit Katerina with the force of a freight train. We crashed onto the landing, rolling over the expensive Persian rug. I wasn't a trained assassin. I wasn't a soldier. I was a mother, and I was fighting a woman who had tried to kill my child. Katerina screeched, clawing at my face. Her nails raked down my cheek, drawing blood. I didn't feel it. I grabbed a handful of her platinum hair and slammed her head against the floor. You touched her, I screamed, slamming her head down again. You touched my daughter! She kicked me off, scrambling backward. She was fast, desperate. She grabbed a heavy crystal vase from a side table and swung it at me. I ducked. The vase smashed into the wall, showering us in glass. I tackled her again. We slammed into the display cabinet that held Alexander's rare vintage wine collection. The wood splintered, the glass doors shattered. Katerina fell backward into the cabinet. A scream tore from her throat, a sound of pure, wet agony. She tried to push herself up, but she slipped. I stood up, breathing heavily, my chest heaving. Katerina lay amidst the broken bottles and shattered glass. A large, jagged shard of the cabinet door was embedded deep in her cheek, slicing from her eye down to her jaw. Blood poured down her face, ruining the perfect makeup, ruining the haute couture dress. My face, she wailed, touching the wound with trembling hands. My face! Downstairs, the front doors burst open. The ghost squad poured in. Gunfire erupted in the courtyard, but inside it was over. Dmitri walked in, dragging a man by the collar of his suit, Petrov. He threw the old man to the floor at the foot of the stairs. Petrov looked up, seeing his daughter broken and bleeding above him. Alexander walked over to Lily. He picked her up, burying her face in his neck so she wouldn't see the carnage. He whispered something in her ear, soothing her, rocking her. Then he looked at me. He nodded at Katerina. Finish it, Emma. I looked down at her. Katerina was sobbing, trying to hold her face together. She looked up at me with one terrified eye. Please, she whimpered, please, kill me. My hand drifted to the knife on my thigh. It would be so easy. One stroke, end her misery, end the threat. But then I looked at her vanity. I looked at the woman who had mocked a child for being poor, who had prided herself on her beauty and her bloodline. I pulled my hand away from the knife. No, I said coldly. Katerina blinked, confused. Death is too easy for you, I said, my voice echoing in the silent hall. You wanted to be a queen? Fine. You will live. You will live with that face. Every time you look in the mirror, you will see the map of your failure. You will see what happens when you touch a Vulov. I leaned down, my face inches from hers. I want you to watch me, Katerina. I want you to watch me raise my daughter in this house. I want you to watch me rule the empire you thought was yours. And I want you to know every single day that a nurse from the slums defeated you. I stood up and turned my back on her. Get her out of my house, I ordered the guards. Alexander watched me, a fire of absolute pride burning in his eyes. He walked to the top of the stairs, still holding Lily, and looked down at Petrov. The old man was shaking. Alexander, please, we are family. Alexander raised his gun. My family is standing right here, he said. Bang! One shot, clean, efficient. Petrov slumped forward. Silence descended on the house. The only sound was the soft, hiccuping sobs of my daughter. Alexander walked over to me. He didn't care about the blood on my face or the rips in my dress. He pulled me into him, his arm a band of steel around my waist. We stood there, the three of us, amidst the wreckage of the old world, the blood of our enemies soaking into the floorboards. We were bruised, we were bleeding, but we were standing. "Let's go upstairs," Alexander whispered, kissing my temple. "Lily needs her bed." Spring came to New York not with a whisper, but with a riot of color. The snow melted, revealing the green earth beneath, and the gardens of the Vulov estate, once a place of cold, manicured perfection, were now overflowing with tulips and wild roses. I sat on the patio, a mug of tea in my hands, listening to the music drifting from the open French doors. Plink, plink, plonk. Inside, at the grand Steinway piano, Alexander sat with Lily on his lap. His massive, scarred hands were guiding her tiny fingers over the ivory keys. "Gently, Malishka," his deep voice rumbled, soft as velvet. "Like you are touching a butterfly's wing." I smiled, resting my hand on my stomach. The nightmare of the winter felt like a lifetime ago. Katerina was gone, living in exile in a sanitarium in Switzerland, her face and her mind broken. The Syndicate had fallen in line, terrified and awed by the swift brutality of the purge. Alexander was no longer just a Don. He was a king, and I was his queen. Not because of a title, but because I had walked through fire to stand beside him. Alexander stopped playing. He whispered something to Lily, and she giggled, hopping off his lap and running out to the garden. "Mommy, look!" She held up a piece of paper. I took it. It was a birth certificate. Name Lily Emma Vulov. Father, Alexander Vulov. It was official. Alexander walked out onto the patio. He looked younger, the shadows under his eyes gone. He held an old, leather-bound document in his other hand. The file regarding Lily's biological father, the evidence of the past. He walked over to the fire pit we had set up for the evening. He tossed the file into the flames. We watched the paper curl and blacken, the secrets of the past turning to ash and floating away on the spring breeze. "The debt is paid," he said softly. He turned to me, his eyes full of a love so intense it made my knees weak. "I have something for you," I said, standing up. He tensed slightly. The last time I gave him a surprise, it was during a gunfight. I picked up a small velvet box from the table. It looked exactly like the box that had started this whole nightmare months ago, just smaller. Alexander stared at it, his jaw tightened. "Trust me," I whispered. He took the box. He opened it slowly, bracing himself. Inside, resting on white silk, was not a threat. It was a pair of tiny, knitted white booties, and underneath them, a plastic stick with two bright pink lines. Alexander froze. He stared at the box. Then he looked at my stomach, then back at the box. The man who could stare down an army of assassins without blinking dropped the box. "Emma?" he choked out. I nodded, tears of happiness pricking my eyes. "The legacy continues, my love." He let out a sound, half laugh, half sob, and swept me up into his arms. He spun me around, burying his face in my neck, inhaling my scent. "Thank you," he whispered fiercely against my skin. "Thank you for not running. Thank you for staying. You and the children. You are my life. You are my blood." He set me down but didn't let go. Lily ran over, hugging his legs, demanding to be part of the hug. We stood there in the garden, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, a family, forged in fire, bound by blood and choice. From an abandoned bride crying in a cathedral to the matriarch of the most powerful empire in the city, it had been a long, bloody road. But as I looked at my husband and my daughter, I knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the wrong train takes you to the right station. And the man who claimed me as a debt turned out to be the only one who knew my true worth. From a bride abandoned in tears to the queen of the underworld, Emma proved that strength isn't about never being afraid, but about what you do when the fear strikes. Thank you for listening to the complete saga of The Dawn's Choice. If you loved this ending, please share it with your friends. Until next time, in another story of dangerous love.